after about a year of absence, I think actually 10 months to be exact, Build and Chill returns once more. It's been a while since I've built a Gunpla kit. Actually, this footage is from earlier in the summer, and I haven't really been building much since, and I wasn't really building a lot before either. It's been kind of hard for me to, carve out time to give these kits the love and attention they've deserved, and that's been made more complicated by the fact that I've kind of gone against my word from what I said earlier in the series, as you may be able to tell from the title and supply list at the beginning of this video. So I always said that, I'm just gonna probably remain a snap builder. I don't really know if I have it in me to actually go out and paint these. Part of that is just due to, living space issues and, not really knowing where to store my supplies, which I kind of worked out a solution for, as I bought a shit ton of stuff. And just in general, I thought the kits looked fine on their own. But I just kind of, over the course of building the kits and kind of getting it down so that the building process became routine, I'm like, I think it'd be a shame if I stopped myself here, and I want to go that next step and really start to personalize these things more. And it just so happened that I had this old HG Strike Freedom kit. I actually think this is the first print of the Strike Freedom. I don't know how many different variants of the high-grade Strike Freedom there have been, but I know that this is at least one of the older ones. I know it's definitely not the Revive version. I think that's what it's called. And the reason I own this was because there's a hobby store that's not super far from where I live, and it's far enough that I don't really regularly go there. And actually, I haven't really gone back since all too often, but I bought this thing from there because the guy was talking to me, and he's like, oh yeah, we don't have too many people around that actually, are super interested in the Gundam stuff, but the people who really come in seem to be really into it or whatever, and I was like, haha, yeah, and, he just would not let me go. It's one of those things where I'm trying to browse the store, but, the store guy keeps talking to you, if you've ever run into that. And I just felt cornered, and I was like, I feel like a massive douche if I'm talking to this guy for 15 minutes and I don't buy something, because their inventory was fairly overpriced compared to every different retailer I've seen for the kits, and they were all older kits like this Strike Freedom, but I was like, I guess I'll get a Strike Freedom, I guess, because it's cheap. So yeah, I bought this really cheap Strike Freedom kit, and I'm like, I don't know what the fuck use I'll ever have for this thing, because for one thing, I'm not the biggest fan of the Strike Freedom's design. I think it's pretty cool, but there's a lot of other Seed and Seed Destiny designs that I actually think I like more. I think the Strike Freedom is okay, but I like the Destiny more, I like the Strike more. Yeah, I don't know, I'm not a big fan of that continuity overall. Just I don't really think Seed or Seed Destiny are that great of shows. But I think they do have some pretty cool mech designs. But I thought, why don't I use this as my guinea pig? So here I am, cracking open the bottle of acrylic Tamiya Flat Red, as it's called, and I'm starting the painting process here. I thought, this is a sticker-heavy kit, as a lot of mid-2000s kits tend to be, and a lot of high grades tend to be, for that matter, even today. Why don't I go ahead and just paint on what would normally be the sticker decals, and these blue wing parts, which I think are technically called the Dragoon funnels. It's been a while for me since I've watched Seed. And here's my little, here's all of the wing pieces, about to be primed or primed. I think technically these are primed, but I did not do a good job of priming. The weekend I did this was ridiculously windy. And I did not realize how many coats of spray you need in general for any type of spraying activity. I probably should have looked into it a little bit more. And also, I really should have used something that was not this napkin or this isn't a napkin, this is just a straight up tissue for painting either, because as it turns out, when it hardens, you want something a little sturdier that it isn't going to stick to and rip residue off of. Tissue paper. So that was a little bit of a shame, but what can you do? So yeah, I think I'll probably try a little bit of a sturdier paper towel or something next time I have the chance to try painting. But yeah, I really enjoyed the painting process. I decided to go with hand painting on some acrylics, and I chose acrylics even though I know I don't know, I've seen kind of half and half. I've seen some people be like, what do you mean? Tamiya acrylics are wonderful for hand painting, and I've seen other people go like, no, they fucking suck, or you're gonna infuriate yourself throughout the process. And that's the one thing I learned looking into painting. Everyone's gonna tell you something different. The most helpful resource I found, actually, I'm going to link to it down below. It's become one of my favorite model kit channels on YouTube, is Paint on Plastic, who is a guy named Lincoln Wright, who is just a expert model kit builder and, you know, painter and all that, who sometimes does Gunpla stuff. And he has really long, like hour-long tutorials on just his hand painting process and him kind of working you through how to think about hand painting and kind of the way he does it and how he's found success. And what I really learned from his videos is that there's more than one way to skin a cat, to use a kind of problematic phrase. Sorry, animal lovers, but you can see me making kind of like a really runny, more thinned black paint mix there. I used a little bit more thinner just to make it run a little bit more, so that I could actually paint on the black of the little eye visor part, so then I could go in later and then paint over on top the parts that I didn't paint that are a little bit raised for the yellow. You're going to see a close-up when I'm done here. And I know this isn't the most ideal camera angle, as always, but I'm working with what I have. But yeah, that's just kind of what I learned from the process, is that really the easiest way to learn how to paint is just pick up the materials that seem like they're going to work best for you. In my case, I chose acrylics because they're not toxic, and I just kind of prefer that all around. I think I'm going to stick with acrylics. Like, I use some, like, lacquer-based paint sprays, or whatever, rather. But I have the respirator on, and I'm using that, and I'm making sure stuff, you know, I'm shooting it so that it's not, the wind isn't blowing it back in my face, you know. I'm trying to be as safe as possible, because I really am a firm believer that no hobby is worth risking your health over, especially something that isn't, like, physically intimidating. Like, I get that if you're like an athlete, or if, like, you know, you're a mountain climber or something like that, there's obviously going to be some risk involved with stuff like that. But we're painting model kits here. I don't need to poison myself because of the materials I'm working with. You know, I'm not gonna risk my health for my art in that way. I just don't believe in that. I prefer being healthy and not having respiratory problems. Thank you very much. So I chose the Tamiya acrylics, which just seemed the most accessible to me. Mr. Color stuff seems a little bit harder to find, though someone on Twitter did send me a link to a website where you can get them in the States pretty easy, so I need to go track that down again, actually. Because I do want to explore some of that stuff, and Mr. Color is also what the Gunpla manuals use for the painting guides. And then, of course, I picked up these little trays here, and the alligator clips that I just have in a piece of styrofoam that we had lying around our basement from something. There's just a big block of styrofoam that was around, so I don't know why it was green like this, but we tore off a chunk of that, and I just have been using that to put my clips in when I need to wait for, you know, stuff to dry and all that good stuff. And I can't remember what I'm painting here. You saw me painting the wings before, and the key to success for the acrylics and hand painting them, especially for Tamiya, it seems like, is you really have to do many thin coats. Make sure that it isn't too thick, but it's not too runny either. That seems like consistency of milk is what you want. And here's me painting on some metallic, which is just naturally, it seems a little bit more goopy than the other paint, even when thinned. So kind of had to work a little bit to make sure I was getting a good mix of paint and thinner here. But when it goes on pretty nice. So I was happy about that. I don't think that I'm ever going to just use metallic for this much surface area again. I decided I just want like a really metallic heavy looking gun like this, and then I painted on the red like scope part, or whatever the gun sight is, or the proper term in the Gundam universe for the sight on the top. I don't know seed lore as well as I know Universal Century stuff. I'm sure there's a name for it, though, because there's a name for everything in Gundam. Yeah, I painted the, there's a little bit at the tip there, which you'll probably see later, that I painted red just so it, you know, wasn't fully one solid gunmetal color. And, yeah, I don't know if I'll do this again. I think the metallics look best when you use them for the internals and the parts in the inside that just kind of poke through. or just the unarmored bits on the arms and the legs and stuff. It just kind of breaks up the colors of the armor plating on the Gundam, and it kind of makes it look more like there's... And, you know, it doesn't look too bad, it's just I think it looks a little bit boring, and there we go, you can see I painted on the red there. Yeah, it's not as bad, but just as I look at it on my shelf as I have it, I think I'd like it just better as a solid color, and I leave the metal for the actual Gundam's internal bits, just to make it pop a little bit more. You can see I have the wings all assembled there, and I actually really like how the wings turned out. The only part of the kit that I primed were the wings, and I didn't even, like I said, I kind of didn't cover them enough. I really should have waited for a day that was less windy outside, and coated it a little bit more evenly with primer, and just painted as I painted them, and I think I would have got a little bit of a better result, but even then, and here's me using the Tamiya panel liner bottles, which I also picked up too, which do their job fucking fantastic for smaller areas like that. Not always great. I noticed for Gundam faces, they don't seem especially fantastic. But yeah, as I was talking about the priming, it's a difference like night and day from painting on unprimed plastic to painting on primed plastic. The shoulders I did not bother priming just because at this time I still don't think or actually no, I did have white paint, but I didn't want to, for like the details like the shoulder like that, I didn't want to repaint the whole thing. I just wanted to paint the part that normally a sticker was supposed to go on. I just wanted to paint it red. So I didn't prime the shoulders at all. And those were a lot trickier to paint that large of a surface area on the shoulder and make it look good and clean. I think I did the best I could have possibly done given how I did it. And looking at it, just, you know, there's a little bit that I couldn't get cleaned off. You know, usually when you go a little bit outside of the lines or whatever with the paint, you need to clean it up and just rub it down with some thinner and a Q-tip or whatever until it all fades out. And there's a little bit, I think especially on white plastic, that can be hard, and there's some stuff you're just never going to be fully able to get out, sadly. So there's a little bit of like a pinkish hue, but you can't really notice it unless you're looking at it. Super, at least in person, you can't really notice it unless you're looking at it super up close or in detail or whatever. But yeah, I think that for future stuff, like even this little tiny bit of yellow here, you could tell it just, the paint was not adhering to the plastic as well as it was when I was painting the primed wings, even though I didn't have, like I said, obviously, for the millionth time now, as much primer as I should have on there. And I really wish, too, that I didn't think about it until after, but, you know, that's one thing that people always say in these painting tutorial videos and gunpla painting in general, you know, use what you got and just do the best you can. So I did not have masking tape that I could use, even like just regular tape that I could use as makeshift masking tape. I didn't have any to get these yellow elevated parts painted and protect the blue underneath. So I just tried to be as gentle and careful as possible, and then I just, you know, anything that kind of, you know, melted down to, not melted, but, you know, kind of spilled over into the back of the wings where it shouldn't have been. I just tried to clean up as best I can, and because thankfully it's darker plastic, it really wasn't as, you know, it didn't look as bad as I think the red that spilled onto the white did on the shoulders. But yeah, you can see we're about halfway done here. We have the torso, arms, and head all complete there. And you can see I equipped it with the beam shield, which I know a lot of people, there's the shoulders in their crude painted form. I'm still kind of waiting for them to dry here when I snapped this picture, so I could clean up the edges with thinner. And actually, before I talk about the beam shield, I want to talk about these feet. So I wanted to see what filling in larger holes or gaps with the Tamiya paint liner would look like, and I wasn't super happy with the results. And I think that really these things are really just meant for panel lines, and they really, strictly lines. It is panel liner, it is meant just for lines. I was not happy with the results of trying to fill in these holes with paint. I left them as is though, but I think really the answer is you need to really get in there with a tiny paintbrush and just fill in those gaps with black paint or whatever. Or, you know, use a Gundam marker too, which, you know, those are still a very useful thing to have around, and I think even there's a lot of people that say they use those instead of paint sometimes on their builds, even just because of how convenient they are. But apparently they don't always work with top coat super great, so I don't know. I'll have to experiment with that in one of my builds for another kit that I don't particularly care messing up on or whatever. And also, this is the first time I decided to try out safety fin removal. I think I said this in another video. I don't really think that the safety fins look that bad. I know a lot of people think they're horrendous, and it's sacrilege to not remove them. I don't know. I just never minded the fact that they were there, and also I was really nervous about fucking up and breaking the V-fin, because the V-fin is such an iconic part of the Gundam look, and if that thing breaks, it just kind of makes the whole kit look a little goofy. But yeah, it's not that hard, and I think I'll probably just keep doing it in the future, just because it'll probably... I don't know, it probably technically objectively looks better, and I'm just wrong, but I don't know, I don't really care that much, but it's easy enough to do, and you just gotta sand down the part that you trim out so it looks even from behind, but honestly, no one's really gonna be looking at it from that angle anyways, so who cares, but oh well. Yeah, I guess it depends on how you pose the kit, right? But yeah, I decided to use the beam shield, that's what I was talking about earlier, because there's just not a lot of beam shields in Gundam, and I like to vary up my kits and how I have them all posed up and stuff like that. And I just haven't had a kit yet where I used the beam shield, and I can't think of too many other kits I wanted to buy in the future that would have a beam shield, so I thought, fuck it, the Strike Freedom's the perfect example for that. And I don't think this beam shield looks too bad. I really like the transparency of the plastic for it. You can kind of see it in the bottom there. It's resting off of the arm for whatever reason. I don't know why I had it off for this clip, but yeah, I figured, this is a good enough looking beam shield, because there are some kits that I've seen pictures of, and I'm like, I really think they didn't do the beam shield effect part super great, and it looks kind of gross, but I thought this looked fine, so I decided to go with that and the gun. Yeah, I don't know, I really enjoyed the process of painting this thing. I'm kind of running out of things to talk about here, but one thing I will say is that I think this was a good creative process for me, just because it reminded me of the physicality of the materials I was working with, and just how these kits are curved and shaped, and how material that flows kind of goes with those curves as you paint it on, and just the physicality of painting that I think you kind of get a little bit with canvas painting and just painting you're more familiar with from, you know, maybe when you were in school or whatever and you did a little bit of painting, or if you are a painter, obviously you're working with these materials all the time, but this is the first time I really have ever had to do something creative like this, where I had to take into account all of the different chemical properties and physical properties of the paint and make sure that I was working with it in a way that didn't sabotage me in other parts of the project, or making sure it just looked good and that things weren't gonna mix in a way that made everything look horrendous or just ruin the project, which is a little bit of a challenge and can be a bit of a headache at times, but when you really start to feel like you're starting to master these materials, or at least not even master, because I wouldn't even say I'm that confident yet, obviously this is my first paint job, but you start to understand it and appreciate just how these things work and how you can use them, and the care that you need to take, and the research and preparation you need to take to make sure that everything that you're using, you fully, or at least good enough, understand what they can be used for and the limitations of what you're working with. It was probably, ironically enough, even though I don't super love the kit or anything, I think it's the favorite building process I had, just because that layer of painting and all that just made it that much more fun. And as you can see, here's everything starting to get all finished up here. I have the little launchers on the hips all panel lined and equipped there too, so that's looking good. I have the wings all ready to put onto the backpack, laying them down. But yeah, I'm looking forward to painting more kits in the future. I'm still gonna snap kit quite a few kits probably, just because you can't paint them all. You know, I don't have the time for that, or you know, even the finances for that, because you go through these materials quickly, some of them. So yeah, but yeah, this was just a wonderful, wonderful project, and I'm happy I made the jump and decided this was something I wanted to do for myself. And whenever I have the time and the weather is, the weather conditions and humidity and all that are willing, and there's all of the different pieces there, and there we go, all together there. I'm looking forward to painting more kits. And if you're wondering why I went with red for the Strike Freedom's wings instead of the canonical blue, I just think red is a cool color. That's really all there is to it, so don't think too much about it. But yeah, not the perfect paint job in the world, but I'm pretty damn happy with it for a first go around, and I'm looking forward to honing these skills and improving as we go further from here. And I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you're thinking about painting or getting into Gunpla yourself, do it. Never been a better time, and it's easier than ever before, and it's not as hard as you think, and it's a lot more fun than you think too. Thanks y'all for watching. Have a good one. Bye.